down to a minimum energy package. And it's a finite package, and it's absolutely discontinuous for the next package. So he said, the universe is an aggregate of finite. Therefore, the total is finite, an aggregate of finite is finite. But you and I tend to say the proclivity of man is to say the finite is viewable, it is seeable, conceptual. Einstein's definition, which I said, comes in the category of scenario. He didn't call it scenario. There have been other scientists who spoke about it as serial universe and so forth, meaning scenario. There was a very, very fascinating English scientist, philosopher, James Dunn, who wrote this serial universe. Now, scenario, what you think about, is an aggregate of frames. And there's nothing in the single frame caterpillar that tells you it's going to be butterfly. There's nothing in one single frame butterfly that tells you a butterfly can fly. You have to have a whole lot of frames of butterfly changing in relationship to the environment to realize they're flying. You find that in scenario universe, there's no meaning whatsoever until you get a great many of the special case experiences, and there's a little intuition of some relationships going on here. That's why the scenario is so fascinating. You feel something, you're looking for those relationships all the time that are being increasingly suggested as probably present as one event after another. Now, we have then a scenario universe is then non-unitarily conceptual. Single frames are unitarily conceptual. So the universe is defined by Einstein as non-unitarily conceptual. So we have him, and it is finite because it's an aggregate of finites, and it is eternally regenerative, yet it is non-unitarily conceptual. So when you find yourself asking yourself the question, having heard that the astronomers just found a further out star, when you say, I wonder what's outside, you're asking a sculptural question, a single frame. The outside means that you do have a picture, a single one. And that's like asking which word is a dictionary. It actually is a meaningless question in the terms of scenario universe. Once you realize what it was Einstein was really introducing here. So we have aggregates of finites. Now I've felt that I could expand Einstein's scenario physical universe to also include my metaphysical experiences, because all of those always begin and end. My information stimulants from the brain are always terminal. So all my inputs are finite. So I said, I'm going to define physical and metaphysical universe, which I'd like to do now if I can, so in order to be able to start with the whole, is then, I said, an aggregate of all humanity is consciously apprehended and communicated experiences. You communicate yourself or to others, but the experience is not in any way, it has no meaning until we actually try some kind of communication of it. That is its beginning, is a communication. So it is a communication. The experience is a communication. So I said, I think I can combine the metaphysical and the physical by saying it is then the aggregate of all humanities, consciously apprehending and communicating experiences, which are an aggregate of non-simultaneous, only partially overlapping events, both metaphysical and metaphysical, energetic and as well as metaphysical, weightless. So therefore I said, I see then, universe, or each one of those metaphysical experiences always begins and ends. Our experience is that way. It's the nature of the special casing that they are terminal. Therefore I said, they too are an aggregate of finite. So the universe has to find, both metaphysical and physical combined, is finite but non-unitarily conceptual. So I said, what is then conceptual? And what is thinkable? This brought me then to, I'm now
the old boy. And the legend is that when he was born, he was already had a white beard. So it's sort of like this, that when you have contributed to society, when you've contributed children and brought them up, and you have assumed a certain role in social life, you then say, now it's time for me to find out what it's all about. Who am I ultimately behind my outward personality? What is the secret source of things? And the latter half of life is the preeminently excellent time to find this out. It's something to do when you have finished with the family business. I am not saying that that is a sort of unavoidable strict rule. Of course, one can study the Tao when very young, because it contains all kinds of secrets in it as to the performance of every kind of art or craft or business or any occupation whatsoever. But it does, in China, in a way, it plays that role of a kind of safety valve for the more restricted way of life that Confucianism prescribes. And there is a sort of type in China who's known as the old rogue. He's a sort of intellectual bum, often found among scholars, who is admired very much, and a type of character which had an enormous influence on the development of the ideals of Zen Buddhist life. He is one, you see, who goes with nature rather than against nature. Well, now, first of all, I'm going to talk about ideas which come strictly out of Lao Tzu's book, the Tao Te Ching. And, of course, the basic thing in the whole philosophy is the conception of Tao. This word has many meanings. And the book of Lao Tzu starts out by saying that the Tao which can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Or there's a pun in there which you can't quite put into English. You can't give all the meanings, because the word Tao means both the way or course of nature or of everything. It also means to speak. So the actual opening phrase of the book, following this word Tao, there's this, and the character is repeated again. You see? And this character means can be, or can, able, something like that. So the way which can be, then give it its second meaning, spoken, described, uttered. But it also means the way that can be weighed. Not W-E-I-G-H, but W-A-Y-E-D. You know, you'd have to invent that word. The way that can be traveled, perhaps, is not the eternal way. In other words, there is no way in which the Tao, or following the Tao, there's no recipe for it. I can't give you any do-it-yourself instructions, A, B, C, D, as to how it's done. It was like when Louis Armstrong was asked, what is jazz? He said, if you have to ask, you don't know. Now that's awkward, isn't it? But we can gather what it is by absorbing certain atmospheres and attitudes connected with those who follow it. And from the art and the poetry.
On the outskirts of the solar system, in fact, halfway between here and the nearest star, are the comets. They are the closest thing to interstellar matter that we are likely to be able to examine in the near future. They're almost complete mystery and another major objective of space exploration. Now, this picture of the solar system is relatively recent. For most of human history, people thought that the Earth was at the center, not just of the solar system, but of the universe, and that not only all the planets went around the Earth once every day, the Earth was not around every, but also the sun went around the Earth. And that was a kind of astronomical egotism, which we thought we were splendid, and all the other objects in the universe somehow secondary to the Earth and its inhabitants. Well, what we have found is just the opposite. That we are in a very humdrum and ordinary locale in the universe. And one way in which this was found was to consider the question of the phases of the planets. Now, we know that the moon goes through phases. We see full moon, half moon, quarter moon, crescent moon, new moon. But what about the planets? Now, in the old Earth-centered view, the planets, in this case Venus, were imagined. There's a lovely old book which has moving parts in our books today, which are accidentally moving parts. This one is moving on purpose. Venus was imagined to go around the Earth, but also to have a little internal motion of its own, and that view, with the sun out beyond Venus, made a certain prediction about the phases of Venus. You sometimes see partly illuminated Venus, sometimes full illuminated Venus, but no one had a telescope to see whether Venus went through phases, and if so, what kind. Now, here is the Earth-centered view of the universe, with the Earth here, the planets, and the sun going around the Earth. This is the supposed orbit of the sun. And in the sun-centered view of the universe, the planets, including the Earth, go around the sun. And as this old picture shows, go through phases. Well, in the sun-centered view, or hypothesis, let's try and see what the phases ought to be like. What I'm going to do is to have someone be Earth and someone be Venus, and I will try to be the sun. And just because somebody big has to operate the light. And let's see what the phases of Venus would be like. So could we have an Earth person? Could you please stand by, let's say, a few steps up, by that camera, and we will be eventually viewing things on the television screen from the point of
these ways to an extreme. Only it's very difficult for a person who follows this way to understand this way. Or for a person who understands this way to get with this. Or even between right angles. They're a little difficult to understand. And I imagine many of you here, you wouldn't be in this kind of a scene if, for example, you understood the way of repentance. That was the way that you like to follow. You would be in church instead. So I'm starting out with this way because it's the most difficult for probably most of you to understand and the most repugnant. The extreme of repentance, you know, of course, is the penitente cult in Mexico and the southwest here, among the Indians, an extreme of identification with Christ and his crucifixion, kind of self-torture. And the extreme of this way is, of course, the penitentiary. The most interesting experiences that many of us have had through exploring the prison world of the asylum, world of the enemy of society, and that as a kind of yoga. You know that San Quentin looks like the Potala at Lhasa, the great Tibetan monastery. It's the same, almost the same architectural design. And I lecture at San Quentin about once a year, and the most extraordinary questions and the most attentive audience you can imagine, and lots of them. It is a kind of monastery, as asylums for the insane are also kinds of monasteries. So I'm just saying these general things to give you an outline of the scheme we're going to follow. And then I'm also going to illustrate these moves by playing music appropriate to what they have to do.